Everyone from Rackspace Corporate Headquarters. My name is Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist, and welcome to Cloud Talk Live. Everyone, I do want to welcome you to our program. I'm down in our event center. We're going to be doing all kinds of fun stuff here for the job today. And I thought, why not just post up here and have our conversation? Now, I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist for us here at Rackspace in the office of the CTO, and delighted to be here. Now, I would love to know who you are. I'd love to know where in the world you guys are. So comment anywhere you want to find that you can, and introduce yourself. I'd love to be able to engage with you. Now, there is going to be a bit of a contest coming up. And that contest is going to be when my guest comes up, Nikki Robinson, delightful Nikki Robinson. She's got a new book out, and somebody may get an opportunity to win that book. But you can't do it unless you start talking to me in the chat. So go ahead and do that. Now, if you want to get a hold of us here at the Solve program, and Solve is Rackspace's thought leadership program. We don't sell anything here. Sean's here. And you can just do that by sending us an email at solve@rackspace.com. And Christopher is here from Palm Coast, Florida. Fantastic. Everyone's coming on in. Ecuador is here. Delhi is here. Indiana is here, right next to Delhi, just a little east. And so anyway, this is going to be a great program. Really excited about it. You know, that stage you see up there, were you a part of last week's Cybersecurity Summit? Well, that is exactly where it took place. And so it's really fun to be back in the castle with you all this morning. Suraj is here. So glad that you're here. Rima is here from India. We always have a good group from India. Folks, if you are interested in learning any of the things that we are sharing here at the Solve program, all you have to do is head over to rackspace.com/solve, and you'll find all that information. Now, the audio from this program, as well as the podcast, shows up anywhere podcasts can be found. All you have to do is subscribe to Cloud Talk, and those can be found, of course, anywhere that podcasts are found. Welcome, by the way, from Minnesota. I bet it's starting to get cold up there. I mentioned earlier the Cybersecurity Summit. Well, look right there. There's an image from just up there on that stage over there. If you're interested in learning more about that, it was a fantastic conversation with 4 incredible cybersecurity professionals. Well, then all you have to do is, well, if you just go to YouTube, that's probably the easiest place to find the whole thing. We had some bandwidth issues, though that's the one that's over on LinkedIn. But on YouTube, just search for Rackspace Technology, and you'll find the whole summit listed there. So go check that out. It was so much fun. We're going to do one of those every quarter. Welcome, Ashkay from India. We're glad that you are here as well. Well, enough of the pleasantries and the introductions. It's now my great pleasure to introduce to you Nikki Robinson. Nikki is she is part of the CISO office over at IBM. She's a security architect. She is an author. She is a brilliant person, and she has come to have a little conversation with us here this morning. Now, as you know, the first Tuesday of every month is Women in Tech Tuesday, and I'm so glad, Nikki, that you've come to be a part of the program. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So there's so much we can dig into. Where to start really is the big question. But why don't we just start with who you are in your current role and what fills your day?
Yeah, so currently I do a couple of different things, but I'm a security architect at IBM. I'm also an adjunct professor at Capital Technology University. I have a background in IT operations, but moved into security about 3-4 years ago. I specialize in vulnerability management, vulnerability chaining, as well as human factors. So sort of blending security and human factors in the last couple of years.
And we talked last week in our cybersecurity summit a bit about the human factors and how that plays so much into what's happening today in and around keeping our data safe and secure. But one of the other topics we dug into, and I want to just touch on it here, is the fact that you say you started in IT operations, keeping the servers and the things alive. But you something about security attracted you, and down the rabbit hole you went, and down the Ph.D. Avenue you went as well. And we talked a lot last week about how so many folks who are in security today didn't necessarily start there. What was it that pulled you out of IT ops and that was so intriguing about cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I had a very heavy systems administration background with
Mhm.
Windows systems administration, and when I became a system owner, really owning an entire infrastructure and started getting interested in vulnerability management because, at the end of the day, I'm the one responsible for all of that risk. And
That's right.
so I got really interested in especially low and medium vulnerabilities and how they're used in combination. And that led me to the DSC in cybersecurity, and seeing how these vulnerabilities scored by CVSS as low and medium are actually highly exploitable and can be used in combination to create critical attacks. And so I wanted to take that research that I was doing with the DSC and move into security to see how I could start to try to figure out how to solve this issue. So the last really 3, 4 years have been dedicated to understanding vulnerability scoring, understanding exploitability, and how vulnerabilities are used in combination.
Okay, well, let's talk about vulnerability scoring for a second, because a layman's term for that is what's the most pressing problem that you have to go deal with. That's the most basic way to address it. But why don't you unpack some of the methodologies around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, that's really the industry and international standard for what we use for scoring vulnerabilities. And it's a great place for us to start. There are a number of other scoring methods out there. There's EPSS now,
Mhm.
the exploitability scoring system. There's the SSVC. So there's a number of different ones out there, but it really just sort of helps give us a place to start. The CVSS is broken down by temporal based environmental metrics, but all of those really help us just sort of understand what's my risk.
Right. What's the risk? So risk management, vulnerability management. Now, as you start to think about that and how to deal with it, we've had this whole conversation so far, really from a technical angle. But in your book, you've got a brand new book that you just announced last week. It's available over on Amazon. I'll bring up a picture of it here in a second. You talk a lot about those human factors, because it's not always just, hey, there's something, there's a firewall that has a port open, there is a patch that's not applied. Vulnerability actually has a lot to do with what's happening over on the biology side of the equation.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spent so much time being technical and really interested in those technical things. And one of the things I started seeing, especially in the last few years, moving from IT and security, is that the relationships that we build within security to IT to development within management circles, how we build those relationships really impacts our security, sometimes positively and sometimes
Mhm.
not so positively. So I wanted to explore how those relationships, the different jobs that we have, the different goals and missions, and how we sort of interact with each other can really impact security. And that's really why I wrote the book.
Interesting, and it even gets a little more fuzzy than that when you think about it, because it's not just, hey, what are the organizational relationships that exist here, but what are the preconceived notions that exist there? For instance, me personally, I mean, I've worked in IT for way longer than I would be happy to admit. And the reality is a good day happened when I didn't have to talk to security. It's like where you went when you were in trouble. I did a bad thing and I'm going to get my hand slapped. Or there's a new thing that they're going to lord over us. But that does not create a safe and secure environment for our data assets.
Yeah, it's honestly exactly what you're speaking about is why one of the other reasons why I wanted to get into security, because I was in that same boat, right? In IT operations, I was like, oh no, I'm getting an audit or an assessment, or oh
Yeah.
no.
It's like
And
the IRS comes calling.
yes. Yeah, it's not a good conversation. And I really wanted to change that conversation around what security means, that there can be creative solutions. There can be, workshops. It doesn't have to be this, 300-page report that I've sent to you and you have to do all these things, but
Right.
it can be a conversation. It can be, what are your needs? What are your goals? Do you have a delivery? Um, do you have some other constraints, whether it's organizational constraints or project constraints, that we can work on to figure out really a maturity model,
Yeah.
something where can we start and then where can we build off of that? And I think that that helps change the conversation around what security means. It doesn't have to be negative. It can be a, hey, let's work together and figure this out.
Right, and I love the fact that you use the phrase maturity model, because a maturity model says, look, here's the continuum, here's a best case, and here's not best case. We
Right.
fall somewhere on there. Now let's work together to figure out how we move that needle from one side to the other.
Yeah, absolutely. It becomes a conversation instead of a, do this thing now or you have to
A
do these
finger
things.
wagging, you got to go do a
It,
thing.
yeah, exactly. It's more about let's talk to each other and figure out what's going to work best for you because I think that's where sometimes problems can occur, right? Is if I walk into a room and I say, you have to do these things now, that does create that unconscious bias moving forward. That
Mm.
changes the perception of how someone, might interact with me. Whereas if I walk into a room and I say, hey, I see we've got these issues, but I want to help you solve them. Let's figure out how we can do that together. It changes the conversation, it changes the dynamic and ultimately improves that relationship. And then it becomes a let's do this together instead of you need to do this now.
I'm chuckling to myself because I just went and looked at some of the chats, and Michael says, "Security wants to see you." I mean,
Yes.
these are phrases you never want to hear.
Yeah.
But when you look at your book and some of the words that are there, hopefully, folks, you're picking up on the fact that the new world of security and security has to be baked into everything from the earliest stages to the whole lifespan. Is that security wants to work with you inside of the business, not in a finger waggy sort of way, but in a way to help make you better and your services better. In fact, I think Nikki, maybe one of the reasons we get along well is as I look even at your book, there's lots of alliteration in there. And when you even look at the book description, you're looking at ways to help these organizations, helping the business and security communicate, collaborate, and compromise. Compromise is not a word I think of when I think of security, but
Yeah.
maybe think about those three things and unpack that a little bit about how those three areas, communicate, collaborate, and compromise, helps make a more secure organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we get stuck on sometimes is that, okay, we have these controls. Let's take GRC for example. We have these controls, we have to implement them or else we're not secure or we're not compliant.
Yeah.
And if you can take that list and say, these are doable, these might be doable, these are not acceptable. We cannot accept this. It affects functionality or operability, whatever those controls might be. Then you can get to a place of risk acceptance where you can say, you know what, these things aren't going to work for us. We understand the risk, we're documenting the risk, and we're okay with that. And that it's really, I feel like, sort of security's job at that point to say, okay, we've explained the risk, you understand it, we know we can't fix everything, so let's focus on the stuff that we can fix. And that's where that compromise comes in instead of
Mm.
saying, you have to or you will, but okay, let's figure out what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. Now, all of this, of course, is available in that new fancy book of yours. In fact, Daniel, if you bring me up into the big screen, I can show a picture of the book title right here. And there we go. It's called Mind the Tech Gap, Addressing the Conflicts Between IT and Security Teams by Dr. Nikki Robinson. Nikki, that's not something we've really addressed yet. Let's talk about your educational accolades.
Yeah, one doctorate wasn't enough. I'm not sure why.
Why would it
Um,
be?
you
Why
know.
would it be?
But yeah, so I went for the DSC in cybersecurity at Capital Technology
Mhm.
University, and one of the things, that was where I was really focused on that technical vulnerability scoring, and then there was the PhD in human factors that came out right around the time that I was doing the DSC. And I was like, oh man, should I switch? Should I do this? And I decided to finish the DSC. And then after that, I did the PhD in human factors because I felt like there's this running joke in the industry that there's 20 human factors security researchers and we all know each other. It's true. We do know each other. um, but yeah, but I really wanted to get the PhD to complement what I was doing in cybersecurity, and I felt like there was such a good blend of research there, and to blend that with the practical expertise.
Very interesting. So, you're quite accomplished, whether it was from your career in the IT side, what you've done to retrain and dig into on the security side. This is a lot for any individual. But you are a young mom with young kids, family. How do you balance all of that?
Oh, I'm thinking about writing a book on time management because it's the
But
one.
you don't
It's
have time to do it. I guess
No, I
that would
don't
be
have
the
time.
joke.
I'm too busy. No, but I've thought about this a lot because one of the things that I've found is you really have to find what works for you.
Mm,
Time management is going to be different for everyone and look different for everyone.
yeah.
For me, I like writing from like 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. or from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Like those blocks of writing time work really well for me, mostly because everyone else is asleep. I don't have to,
That helps.
worry about anything else. I can just focus on writing. And so And I also love writing, so that it comes easy to do that. But I've found when it comes to time management, I have lists upon lists. They're like everywhere.
Yeah.
So I keep lists for the different types of activities I'm doing. But I found that really planning my day by those like hour or hour and a half type chunks,
Yeah.
that really helps focus on a task for that time. And then I can set it aside and focus on something else.
That's awesome. So, and so you're working in and around a career that is, you make the joke that there are only about 20 of you doing what you do in the human factor side. But even in security itself, that can tend to be a very male dominated sort of
Mm.
environment. This is Women in Tech Tuesday. Let's talk about what your experience has been like. Have there been a lot of roadblocks? Have you found encouragement along the way? What's it been like for you?
Yeah, I've been so fortunate. I have had so many great male mentors,
Mm.
great allies, great people that sort of see my interest and excitement and technical, abilities, and have helped to, bring me along and give me a chance. And there's certainly roadblocks from going from IT to security. That definitely took a little bit of time, but networking, that really helped me a lot. But no, I've honestly had a great experience with a lot of the men that I've worked in the industry. They've all been super supportive and giving me great advice and helping me move forward. And I've been very fortunate in the last year to meet so many more technical women too. That's been so eye-opening. So they're out there, but they are harder to find.
They are harder to find. And you've been off, seen on LinkedIn to get to speak at some conferences on the subject as well.
Yeah, we just did the Uniting Women in Cyber conference. We had a great panel talking about, it was, sort of shine your light. How did you sort of get to that place of, accepting, and my story is really around on the IT side, I got a lot of no's. I want to do this. Nah, no, why don't you do this? And so I sort of got to the point where I was like, I'm really tired of hearing that. So I'm just going to keep pushing and doing it. Cause,
Right.
in the technical field, someone trying to go for a doctorate is not necessarily, it's sort of like, why do you need that? You're
Yeah.
technical.
Like what cert are you going to go get? Why are you going
Yeah,
for a doctorate?
exactly. Yeah. So I got a lot of, interesting feedback on that. So I just decided to push forward because I felt like it was the right thing. And, fortunately I've had some great allies along the way.
That's fantastic. So you just made a comment, and it's something we talked about as we prepared for this, and that was your desire when you want to do something to just kind of go and do it. Now, one of the questions that I told you I'd be asking, and I ask all the ladies who come on, is I get a lot of comments from our viewers that on these Women in Tech Tuesdays that, hey, I'm going to go back and show this to my daughters when I go home tonight or when they get back from school. But what advice might you have for them, or even for 12-year-old Nikki? If you could go back in time and say, do these things, what would that be?
I think it would be taking that advice of sort of using that no as a propellant, something that pushed me forward, doing that sooner. Not being so scared of the
Yeah.
no and saying that, if someone says no, oh, well, maybe I should just keep doing this thing, but not being afraid that when someone says no, if you feel like it's the right thing, whether it's a certification or education or a career change,
Yeah.
to not be scared of sort of what other people think. I think that would be my biggest advice to take earlier,
Mm.
because that helped me a lot. Moving into security, writing the book, I was nervous to do that, getting the PhDs. So I would say don't be scared of the no, and it's okay to try things. I've failed at a lot of things before I got to this point, and it's okay to fail, and those things help you learn and grow.
Failures are very educational, maybe not comfortable, but very educational.
Yes.
Uh,
Definitely.
well, Nikki, thank you so much for being on the program today. I'd love to have you back. I feel like we've just scratched the tip of the iceberg, maybe even a longer conversation on the podcast. So look for a call to come back and hang out with us sometime
Oh,
soon.
that'd be great. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
Absolutely. Now, folks, before you sneak off, Nikki, she has written a book, and I'd like to make that book available to one of our viewers here today. So you saw the email address pop up before. In fact, I'm not going to bring it up. But if you go send an email to solve@rackspace.com, what was one of the things you learned from Nikki today? I'm going to grab one of those, and we will reach out to you to get your address and send you a copy of Nikki's amazing book.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks so much. Have an amazing day. Thanks for being here. All right, everyone. Nikki Robinson, isn't she great? Transparency. I just met her about a month ago, found her on LinkedIn. She's part of other podcasts that I've seen. So, go follow her on LinkedIn, keep up with her. She's on a podcast every Friday with Chris Hughes and some others. So go check those out. And any of this information, of course, you can find over at rackspace.com/solve. But what you won't find there is a pop-up asking you for more of your personal information, because we don't want it. We just want you to have the content that we have there. Now, if you go to rackspace.com and just leave it there, someone's going to sell you something, which is not a bad thing because I work for Rackspace. But if you go to /solve, you've got some immunity there. Nothing's going to happen. All right, let's press on with our morning. That takes us through our great conversation with Nikki. Let's move into this week in cloud. Let me push a few buttons, and we're going to talk about what's going on in the cloud, why it matters to you. And our first story comes from an article that I found over on yahoo.com, their news information. And it was an echo from TechCrunch. Now, this is interesting because what they're saying is for startups, it may not make sense to always go back and try to cut costs in your cloud spend, because it might just take more time, when that time for precious startups who have precious little time to go out and drive more profitability, functionality, these sorts of things. Doesn't mean go spend all your money in the cloud and not pay attention to it, but it is a measured approach to whether you should be spending all your time in cost cutting in where it makes sense, or actually in driving new features and gaining new customers and being more profitable. Profitability is not a bad thing. Sometimes cutting the cost is not the best way to go and do it. Very interesting. Also in the cloud, in a security mindset, there's a company called C-Tickets. They disclosed, Nikki's got to just be having a fit right now, that they had a 2.5-year long credit card theft breach. And they knew about it the entire time, but they didn't tell anybody. In fact, it took them a good long time to figure out that they wanted to actually start patching and fixing this. Now, this company is out of Nottingham, England. They specialize in selling music, theater, and dance event tickets. But back in the 25th of July in 19, somebody came in and stole a bunch of PII. So, moral of this story, learn from folks. If something bad happens, you've got to be transparent about it, especially now, especially if the company that you work for is a public company. You just got to tell the truth. You just got to tell people what happened. So don't be like them. All right, let's move on to updates from new cloud releases from our lovely cloud providers. And it starts, as always, from our friends at AWS. AWS Amazon Neptune Serverless is now generally available. Now, this is a new deployment option that allows you to automatically scale capacity on the needs of the application, making it easy and cost-effective for developers to run graph databases without having to manage the database capacity, making your life easier. Now, be careful. It's going to scale up. Pay attention to it if it needs to scale down and save you some cash. So Amazon, they're quick to scale up. All of them are quick to scale up. So watch out for that. Over at Azure, in the general availability column, is Azure Communication Services for short code functionality for SMS. Now, what this relates to is your ability to write applications that are communicating with your end users via SMS, and them having a bunch of short codes now that people can reply with, why to continue, individual codes to drive certain outcomes. But now that's part of Azure Communication Services. And then over at Google, new from Google Cloud is you can now view BI Engine top tables, cached bytes, and the BI Engine query fallback count and query execution count as dashboard metrics for BigQuery. So more data about your BigQuery stuff. Is the world just all getting sucked into BigQuery? It sure starts to feel like it. Public case study, Rackspace has a bunch of data over there, and holy moly, is it helping us with the things that we do here, actually all around how we gauge customer satisfaction. I'd love to tell you that story if you're interested sometime. All right, now I told you I don't sell you anything here at Rackspace on the Cloud Talk Live program, except for the fact that I'd love for you to come and hang out with us. And I don't usually, most of my jobs that I talk about tend to be technical in nature or relationship in nature. Well, here's a sales job. We're looking for an Azure client executive. That's right, Matt Lathrop, if you're watching, that's our hiring manager. So you would do well to work for him. But you're looking for somebody who can help seek out, explore, and qualify new opportunities at senior levels with mid-market clients across the U.S. This is a U.S.-based role. So if you have a great network in the Microsoft space, well, we are looking for you to come help us bring Azure to them. So if you head over to rackspace.jobs, oh look, it's on the screen. You can apply for that role there and check it out. So go check it out. All right. I want to remind you all that if you are interested in that awesome book from Nikki, you can just send an email to solve@rackspace.com and just mention the thing that you thought was most amazing about that conversation with Nikki that you learned. And the winner will reach out to you and see how to get you that book from Amazon. Folks, I want to thank you for being here today. I also want to thank our great sponsor, App Dynamics. We think they're among the best in the world at full stack observability. So if you're writing applications that run in the cloud, you need to call the good folks over at App Dynamics. Tell them I sent you. Again, I don't know if that means anything, but tell them Jeff sent you. All right, next week I've got a really interesting program for you, and that is we are doing our 2023 predictions episode. That's right, it's November. Sure feels like it's the end of the year almost already. Our program is booked through the end of the year. We actually started booking 2023. Oh, you're going to love our first guest next year. And but we're doing a predictions episode where I'm bringing 4 members of the CTO office here at Rackspace, including Rackspace's own CTO, and we're going to talk about what you can expect to see in 2023. And you know what? The folks around here, they're pretty dadgum smart. I think they're going to get it. But with that, folks, that music means we are done for another week. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the conversation with Nikki. Go follow her on the socials. We'll see you next week.